Welcome back, folks. I want to shift gears now to talk about Extraordinary. It's the movie that we talked about briefly, and obviously the DVD release and the on-demand digital release is due on the 16th of January, and that is today, our recording date. But Shari Rigby is going to be on the phone with us. We're going to talk about this. It is a great biography that really deals with family and marriage and some interesting struggles, so it's great to have Shari with us. How are you, Shari?
I'm great. Thank you for having me this morning.
Awesome. And I tell you, as I watched the movie, I didn't know much about Dr. Horton and his family, even his running legacy was something that I just wasn't into, but I know it has inspired so many people and students and folks there at Liberty University and elsewhere. Were you familiar with the story much before you got into this, and what was your impression after you kind of were first exposed?
No, actually, that's a great question. I had no idea even that ultra marathons, runners actually existed, and definitely was not familiar with Dr. Horton's story. And so when I started reading the script and just started to study who he was and just all the contributions that he's made to Liberty and in these ultra marathons, I was just blown away. But I think the thing that really stood out for me was that you have a man that is literally running not 24, 26 miles, but we're talking 2,600 miles, for 64 days at a time. And to me, that was just, it was crazy. It was overwhelming, and just to really realize that people do this.
Yeah, I have to be honest. If it wasn't based on a true story, I'd scratch my head a little bit and kind of be like, come on, I don't know. People do. I mean, literally, right? It's kind of like the Forrest Gump joke in the movie is sort of well placed. Like you watch that and you're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, sure. But now you find out, like, what do you mean people do this all the time? What do you mean there's like people that do this like 2 or 3 times in their life? That is so insane to me. Maybe I'm just getting too old and lazy. I don't know.
Well, you know what? I mean, he always says that he was made for it, and I do really believe that, you ultimately have to be created in your body. God has to literally call you to something like this, so it's intense.
So as you get to dive into the story and you have the script and you're working with, the creative team there to put this together, did you get a chance to spend some time with the Hortons, get to know them a little bit, get to know Nancy personally, and try to be able to kind of capture some of the essence that's kind of like not actually on the script?
I did. I got a little bit of time with Nancy, but not a whole lot. In fact, I actually had more time with her after the movie was done. And, I did, I read a lot about Nancy. I had heard a brief interview that her and David had done at one of the local churches, and just to really kind of understand her. But what I loved about Nancy so much, and it really hit home with me, even in reading the script, and I think that's where I was able to bring even my life, things that I had gone through into this performance, was that she didn't want her walk in her marriage to be sugar-coated. She wanted it to be real. She wanted it to be a struggle, because that's what it had been. There's been a lot of things for her that had challenged her. And so as a Christian woman, she wanted that to be present. And I think that was something that was really honest and raw and real for me as well. I've been married now almost 21 years. And so for me, I was just really excited to play her in a way that I could bring a lot of the same type of feelings and frustrations and things that I've gone through in my life and my marriage to the character, and then to really understand what it's like for God to bring us together as a husband and wife in partnership, and interacting with friends and how they sharpen us, and really the things that are in our marriages that are tough, but also are so rewarding. And so yeah, I mean, Nancy was just really real for me, more so after the project than even before.
We're talking with Shari Rigby about Extraordinary. It is the latest faith-based inspired film dealing with marriage and the biopic of the Hortons and David Horton, who's a college professor, an ultra-marathon runner, and kind of the sacrifices that his wife Nancy kind of puts herself through by supporting him in this adventure where he basically is gone for over 2 months at a time. This is later in life, so his body's breaking down. They already have a lot of stress and anxiety going on with the family, and he's deciding to do this for yet a third time in the film. And, Shari, give us an example of a time in your marriage, because you mentioned how you've been married for over 20 years. Because you feel one of you feels like God's calling you to do something, but it's not clicking for the other person. Because that's really kind of the crux of the film. It's this pivot point where Nancy's like, well, no, you shouldn't be doing this. And then he's like, well, I kind of feel like I'm getting these like confirmations from God. And she's like, no, I think you're just crazy and you want to do it. And I think she says, are you sure that's God or just what you want? Which I think is probably the biggest question as a Christian we're all asking ourselves for anything that we feel called to do. So give us an example of that between you and your husband, how you get to, and it can be something small, it can be something big, it doesn't matter, that kind of pivot point scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. That I think we all go through, and in our marriages, and my husband and I have both, gone through that because, in marriage we have seasons, and just like our walk in our life and our purpose with Christ, we have seasons and things that he's called us to, at different times in our life. And so just as we do in marriage. And so, in the beginning part of our marriage, my husband is an entrepreneur. He's created several companies. And, entrepreneurs are driven in a way that, they're building companies. And so, my husband was working 7 days a week, and it felt like 24 hours a day. And I was at home raising children. And so, you feel like, well, wait a minute. And he would say to me all the time, I know God called me to this because I'm called to create jobs, to give jobs to other people. Well, what a beautiful thing. And as a woman and a wife, you kind of sit back and go, ooh, am I being selfish because this is what God has called him to do? But yet he's not home. He's not, or when he is home, he's not really home. He's not even really mentally connected. And so, this was a real struggle for us in our life, and, something that we really had to work through, and we had to really find a balance. And I think that's what it comes down to, is it is finding a balance, and how do we support one another as a husband and wife, but also being really reminded that God is also, if you're married, he's called you to a marriage, and he's called you to also do that well. And so I think you really do have to balance it, and I think you really do have to press into God to say, God, is this really what you want of me? And if you do want, you're not a God of confusion. You have a purpose for this, and so please go before me so that I'm doing this well and doing it right, so that I am balanced. And when we flipped that, it was really interesting because as my husband and I have gone through so many years of marriage, later on in our marriage, God called me into the entertainment industry, and my husband's in farming, and he thought I was insane because God was calling us to Hollywood. And all of a sudden now here this scenario is on the, for me.
The shoe's on the other foot. Yeah, right.
Exactly. And he has had to really walk by faith to say, wow, and it took several years for him. He thought I was insane. He thought, you're just pursuing this career because it's Hollywood and all the things that come with that. But then he started to realize, oh, wait a minute, God really is calling her. And because of look at the projects, look at the stories. But again, for me, I had to balance that. I had to make sure that I was walking the way that God wanted me to walk, that I was being obedient in the ways that when I was on set, how did I interact with people? Was my husband and my family still first? So that's really what it's about. It's really being prayerful, being reminded, and really walking through those seasons together. That's how I would share it. So yes, we've been there, done that, and I'm sure we will continue to do it. So
absolutely, and this film really brings together just another great team of creators and folks who are not only exemplary examples of their faith in the entertainment industry, but in so many other projects. Obviously, Kirk Cameron has a small role in the film, but you got to work with Leland, and Leland is a comedian by trade. This is a far stretch from a comedic role. So for Leland, what was it like working with him, and how was he sort of on set to kind of stay it's funny because some actors can just flip it on and off, but I mean, I'm not sure that does he consider himself a professional actor to be able to turn this on and off to play such a serious role as David Horton?
Well, and that's such a great question. I think if you were to meet the real David Horton in person, he's actually quite funny. And he's actually a pretty light character. And so I think that when Scotty Curley and the Liberty team cast Leland in this role, I think they actually did a really great job in understanding the balance of what an actor had to bring to this character. I think that it's definitely a challenge for the dramatic actor and for, us to bring that to the screen. But I think for a comedian, the timing is so specific. And I think that there were moments that if you would have only seen an actor that was, just a very serious dramatic actor, I don't know that he would have been able to bring some of the light moments to this film that needed to happen that Leland did. And so I loved working with Leland. I thought he was just an incredible actor. I love his heart for his family and for God, and just for the way that he wanted to handle this project and to learn, and just to be a part of this creative process. And so he was fantastic. I was surrounded by just incredible people to bring this film, to life, and he was one of them.
I'm getting the speed up motion here because I know we got to take a quick break, but I want to get to working with Karen Abercrombie. Obviously, in faith-based circles, no one's going to forget her performance in War Room. It was just so powerful, and we always hold it true to our heart because her interview was actually our biggest interview in our history for the longest time. It was an explosion for us. Get a great opportunity to get to talk to her, and she was just so transparent. How Karen is Karen, right? I mean, I watch her now, and I'm like, oh, that's just who she is. I mean, she brings a power and a faithfulness and a clarity with her in her performance.
Right. Karen is that. I've worked with Karen now several times, and we've got some more projects that are, in line right now that her and I get to continue to work together. And Karen is Karen. You really get to see just a real authentic performance each time with her. You just get to see who she is, and I love her. I mean, her and I have been friends for years now, and every time somebody says, hey, we've got a part for you that, it's going to be you and Karen Abercrombie, I'm just like, sign me up.
Absolutely.
I'm on board.
Well, we have to take a quick break, and I'm sorry about that. Extraordinary Movie is the website address, folks. You can go there, get more information. We will have all this information. We'll include it in our interview as well as the online versions of this. The digital on-demand DVD version drops today through Universal. Feel free to check that out. And if Shari can hang on just a couple more minutes after break, we'll ask her about a few more things in her past, which I think you guys have seen as well. So stay with us.